You're listening to the Chris Maher Show, live on YouTube.
All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back here to the program. Back here at Chris Maher Show. Going to be a good one. Obviously, no show last week. A couple of things that was kind of been setting up this room, new studio, all that type of stuff, and back at it. It's not 100% done. I'm like from maybe like 45% there. So kind of getting everything kind of set up and under the way, and then we'll be good. 58 days till opening night. I got the watch party on YouTube for that game. I'm kicking it with Knuble. I'm bringing Mike in here just in a second. Bill Meltzer is coming on here at 6:30. Going to be good to talk with Bill, kind of get some, before the season talk kind of under the way. Urson contract obviously signs extension. Frost still not signed, all that type of stuff. So let's kind of get into it. Let's bring in Mike here for Kicking It With Knuble. And here we go. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Chris, how you doing, bud?
Good, man. How are you?
Good, real good.
Yeah, so it's obviously, we didn't talk last week. Couple different things kind of been going on with the Flyers. It's been a little quiet. We're still in that, dog day of summer type, not too much really going on. There's been a lot of different stuff, with just a lot of summer things, honestly. But the Flyers did make a couple moves. They did sign Sam Urson. We've talked about this before, Mike, with the goalies, kind of how they got a lot of different, goaltenders, and, a good chunk of their cap is kind of tied up in goalies. They do sign Urson, 2 years at 1.45 for the extension. Just kind of curious kind of what your thoughts are on that, and just kind of, where it seems like it's going to be going, for the Flyers, kind of, heading up with the goalie situation they have right now.
Well, it feels like a lot of goalies, right? And it feels like, oh, you're overdoing the goalies. But, my experience in the American League the last 6-7 years has been you can't have enough, right? And
right.
The thing is, to run your organization, you need at least five. Five that at any moment can step in and play a game, bro. Hold the fort down a little bit. Mm-hmm. Fives are probably big ask. Legit, you're going to have four, and most teams are going to be probably lucky to have three. And so you hate to go through all those guys. It's not always like like through merit, but sometimes it's by default of injury and cap situations. And if you get tight to a cap, you have to bring a guy up and maybe send a guy down, or something, however you can hide a guy a little bit, so the more the merrier. And certainly you're waiting for one of these guys or a couple of them to really challenge the backup Carter, and then again, whatever happens through training camp, if you get a couple that are really good, and then it just, Danny's going to love it because they'll have options if a lot of them play well. If nobody's playing well, again, you don't have any options. You got to hang on to everybody and hope they sort themselves out, but right. It's good to have that amount of goalies because of poor play and due to injury.
Right. And especially too, because obviously you've played in the league a long time. You understand that, there's a lot of talent, right? I mean, it kind of ranges. Like, they have a good mix of younger guys. So you have Hart, who's obviously a superstar, caliber goaltender. He's still very young. Peterson's a guy that's kind of, trying to find a change of scenery, maybe trying to, rebound his career a little bit, that type of stuff. But, right now it's 11.7% is in three goalies. And me and you have talked about this before, where it's like, you got to kind of figure out how much you want tied into goaltenders, because it's a big thing. Obviously, Hart is a restricted free agent at the end of this season, right? You're going to have to figure that out. If he's traded, if he wants to stay, does he want to play through a rebuild? These are some of the internal questions that they're going to have to kind of face as well. So it'll be interesting. Just kind of curious. Any thoughts on Urson's deal?
Yeah, I mean, again, you're looking toward the future, and that you feel like there's something here, right? And so, to your point, like if you count Carter, Cal, and Sam, and those are the three you mean with 11 million. Well, Cal and Carter each, right? Yeah, so that's probably, if you're managing this team, you're like, okay, we gotta we can't have 11 million and 3 guys. We'd like to maybe get down to 6 or 7 and 2 guys, which would be much more tolerable. But again, 11% of the cap, on those guys, it's a pretty big chunk.
Right.
And Sam is probably still not eligible for waivers if I had to guess, so they can move him around and you can hide him down. But Carter and Fowler, the big ones, they eat a pretty good chunk of your cap.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. Like I think last year at training camp, the Flyers had close to 70 players at camp. It was like the craziest thing. So many invites, so many, it was a lot of goalies. I think there was maybe 6 goalies throughout camp. Obviously guys from the Phantoms who were just kind of there just, for camp and stuff like that and all that type of stuff. But the other thing that's part of it is the Ivan Fedotov situation. With it's a little confusing kind of what's going on with this and where this really is. For Fedotov, basically there's a specific rule that's in the IIHF contract book. And I'll kind of just explain a little bit for people. And then obviously, Mike, I'll ask you about your thoughts on it as well. So essentially the IIHF, they looked at some evidence on Fedotov. They said he basically has a valid contract with the Flyers. Because what happened was, and Mike, I'm sure you probably have heard about this, where last year he ended up, he was going to come over and play, signed a contract. And then basically they told him he couldn't. They basically threatened him, all that type of stuff. I won't go into details, but it wasn't the best situation. So that ends up happening and they end up going into it this year. So his contract ended up getting tolled. So it just got moved back to another season. So it's still valid. So essentially, with that and with that decision and with that evidence that they had, Fedotov had 2 weeks to make a decision, which was essentially go to the Flyers or ask for a release. And where the Flyers will release him, contract doesn't happen, then he doesn't play. Or he could come over to North America and play for the Flyers or at least compete for a spot at camp. He didn't do anything. I don't think he made a decision. So essentially at that point then it was just like, okay. And he ended up getting suspended from IIHF games from September 1st of this year to New Year's Eve, December 31st. So not the best. He's able to come and play, and he really can't play anywhere else. I think the question is Russia really going to abide by what the IIHF is, saying type thing? I'm kind of I know it's a little confusing and I might not have worded it the best way, but just what are kind of your thoughts on this whole thing?
No, I think so. Even going backwards, like the KHL and the NHL, like they've all agreed to like not step on each other's toes. Yeah. Right. So if you have somebody a contract here in the NHL, KHL can't sign him and make this guy jump. Say you get a guy signing for $750, well, the KHL wants to offer him $2 million. You can't get a guy to jump, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Russia said, if we have guys signed, the NHL can't come and swing in here at the end of training camp, for example, and say we need a player. Let's grab this goalie, or whoever it is, any player there. So they've been very good. Now there's all the geopolitical stuff. It's kind of made things a little bit different. And yeah, I mean, Ivan was signed last year and then basically told you're not going. And so, the IHF, how I feel that Ivan did it was he forced the IHF to basically make him less appealing to the Russian Federation, I think, and make him less appealing in that respect and to let him go. So now that this ruling's happened and he doesn't come this year, I could see the NHL just backing his contract up again.
Right.
I don't know how many years you can do that, and so they're kind of have
that's interesting.
They have the inside track, and if he doesn't come this year, will they do it again, or is there 1 year? That's probably
that I don't know, because I don't know if there's a limit on how many times you can toll it to where it just gets moved. But that is a good point. Yeah. Have you ever seen anything like that before, where like it's guys have either like a contract's gotten tolled or they've had to maybe wait or anything like that?
I don't think the NHL and KHL. I mean, KHL really didn't come into like terrific like where they've all really kind of agreed probably into the late 2000s.
Okay.
Where they really kind of straightened everything out. Before it was like if guys were playing in Russia, it wasn't super appealing, And then KHL started to really get their stuff together and become a world player in the league and make each other honor each other's contracts. They didn't want each other poaching, Right. I've seen, I guess at the American level, we've seen some guys come back. Like I remember this guy Eric Tangrady came back. He was over, I think maybe in Belarus. Donbass, is that Belarus or maybe Ukraine or whatever? You'll get guys that leave, and you hear some stories about Russia a little bit and from some of these guys that have gone. But I think they've avoided these fights and they've kind of like stayed away from each other. Like, hey, you keep your space, like, and we'll keep ours. And if guys don't have a contract, then they can cross over. But it's certainly a win for the Flyers, and that they have access to this guy. And again, it's can you get him out of there these days? And how is that? What does that look like these days versus 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Before this stuff with these geopolitical things have popped up. So I don't know, it's 50-50, and so it's hard to say. It's hard to say how it's going to shake out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like, if he does end up coming over, that's another goaltender, because then you have Hart, Peterson, Urson, Sandstrom, and Fedotov, and that's 5 guys who could at least compete for an NHL spot. Obviously, I think everybody kind of knows Hart, with the whole situation with Hockey Canada, whatever really happens there, and who is the starting goaltender, because really we don't know, right? Because again, you have the battle at camp, you also have the hard thing like I just mentioned, and if Fedotov can come over. So there's a lot of different questions surrounding this team. I know we talked about the defense last time and a little bit of the power play, kind of tackling goalies this week and stuff. And we'll, probably do offense next week too. But, it's just like a lot of it is it's a lot of question marks that are up in the air, especially because you have a new type of brass with this. And, if the Flyers want to try to get Fedotov over here, I mean, obviously, in their situation, it's like you're rebuilding. Fedotov's pretty young. And a part of the reason why I think he's, they've wanted him to stay in Russia too, is because he wins over there. I mean, he's won championships. He's one of the best goaltenders. He's huge. I think he's listed at 6'7", 6'6". So he's a pretty big goalie. And I don't think there's been that. I think the last maybe big size goaltender outside of Vasilevsky that I could remember, at least when I started watching, was Ben Bishop. But outside of that, I don't think there's many other ones that have been kind of like that. And, I'm curious, as there was, since we're talking about goalies, was there ever a goalie that maybe always maybe had your number, or maybe a guy that you always scored on, kind of vice versa?
Yeah, where were we? I know we were playing, and everybody was like, don't worry about Marty Brodeur. Don't if you're coming in, don't worry about Marty Brodeur. Like, why are we talking so much about Marty Brodeur? I always felt as a shooter, it was like they're all human, you know what I mean? And I tried not to get too much credence to that, And,
right.
I mean, but he'd be one that had that ability, that was probably in a lot of guys' heads. I tried to stay away from that. Like, I had enough stuff cluttering my brain. I didn't need to worry about the goalie I was playing, shooting on or whatever. I figured it was a way to get it by him one way or another. But at least I can't remember which coach it was. But every time we'd be getting dressed, we're like, and don't worry about Marty Brodeur. We're like, why are we talking about him so much? And you're making everybody worry about it by talking about it so much. So
right.
He would have that potential. I think Patrick Wow had that big, probably, if you're a rookie or your first player coming down, first year player coming down on him, you'd be like, get a breakaway on him or something. You'd be like, oh, this is not going to go good, probably, but, or if it did go really well, it'd be certainly, you feel like that was a pretty memorable moment, probably obviously way more memorable for you than it would be for him. But, and then Hasek was another one that was kind of, a little bit getting guys' minds a little bit more that, because, that unorthodox style that he played, he was, you thought you had him and he'd be rolling around on the ice and all of a sudden shoot a leg up, and so, he would have been one. And my final one would be probably Eddie Belfour, which you might be a little scared to go near him a little bit. Go near him a little bit, and he might just decide to whack you. A little bit also like a Billy Smith back in the day, but not quite as harsh. But as a player, that was my mentality was, I'm not going to
just go to the net. Yeah.
But, I felt like 99% of the time I was shooting the puck, it wasn't going in anyway, so it didn't matter who was in there. Could have been a backup, it could have been the regular guy. It wasn't going in all the time either.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'm just kind of curious then, and this one's a little kind of transitioning from, Flyers talk into some more mindset stuff. For you, Mike, I guess now later in August, as a player kind of preparing for a season, how did you kind of prepare? What were some of the things that you would do if it was psychologically or physically, anything like that? What did you try to do just to try to prepare yourself for, a full 82 game season?
Yeah, it was, you're working out all year, and it was great when we were, kind of spent my summers in Grand Rapids. There was a pro team here, right? Griffins, they were independent, or I think they were with Ottawa or something at the time. And so there were a bunch of guys my age, and I'd still kind of, I kept like every year there'd be a couple that would be around to work out, and then Danny Bilesman was around. Danny Bilesman was, like,
okay,
stuff. He's from our area. So I worked out with him.
Okay.
Ryan Barnes was another guy. He was a Red Wing prospect. And so all these things were going. Eventually I got to the point where there was like nobody left. Right. And so probably coming out of 2000, in the mid 2000s, like we had a nice new big gym in town here. And it was one of the first trainers I had who lifted, like, I think he was a GA at Notre Dame. And so he had that mentality a little bit more than some of the trainers, because we'd lift together and all that, and then try and skate and scrape up ice, and then you were just trying to you're trying to stay strong, and then August got to like the dog days, even for the players now. It's like find guys to skate, and then guys were taking off and heading toward camps. Then some guys are going to NHL camps, some guys weren't. They're like, we still have a month before we have camp, and you're like, I gotta leave in 2 weeks. So you're looking for bodies, which gets hard.
Right.
Now, you live in Minneapolis or Boston or any of that stuff, it's super easy, to find guys. I mean, even Philly probably produces. There's a lot of guys around that start to pile in and skate, which is great. And Voorhees always had that reputation of being a great place to skate. But so coming in mid 2000s, once you had kids, they really back camp up. After coming out of that lockout, camp used to start like the first bit of September, right after Labor Day.
Yeah, around that.
Way back, yeah. So that coincided with our kids going to school. So we were always back in our town by September 1st. And I still had 2 or 3 weeks to go, which was great because you were in your home facility.
Right.
Guys were around.
Just go work out. Yeah.
It's like being at work early, right? You get to work early and then you'll get comfortable. Then guys start coming around. So by the time training camp started, you were already there for 2-3 weeks.
Right. So by that point, you're pretty used to it by then.
I liked it when it got after that 05 lockout, when they back camp up. It was I felt that was a big perk for me because I didn't have to like stress out so much in August. I just kind of kept going and lifting, and I started skating a little bit, and I was getting older. I was smarter. I was older and smarter, and probably more defined as a player, so I wasn't sweating it all the time. Right. But I really liked being able to get to Philly like before, right around Labor Day, and then go to Voorhees, and just it'd be a couple guys. And every day you show up, it was like the boys are getting back to town. Everybody's getting back to town, so it was fun. Yeah,
no, for sure. I mean, I feel like even now, like there's guys that come early too. Like I feel like you see it more where some guys are here real early. I think example like Farabee, I think he's been here since 4th of July.
Sure.
Since around that time.
It's great. I mean, that's why the Flyers facility is great. It's open all the time. Huggy's in there all the time, working on stuff and doing guys wash, and the building's open. The trainers are. That's been an evolution. Is the teams and their facilities, instead of being an 8, 9 month, 10 month thing, they're 12 months now. But to the point, the younger guys, it's harder as a younger guy to come to town because you literally don't have a place to play. You don't have a ton of money, and it's up to you. Like, unless you know Joe Farabee or somebody be like, man, can I borrow a room? Can I crash?
Yeah.
Can I rent a room for like a couple weeks, man? Because I don't want to be in a hotel and pay for that, and it ends up being pretty costly. So that's a little bit of a negative in that respect is the players. But again, the younger players get here early. They start rookie camp and they do all that stuff a little bit early. So, for the younger pros with houses, it's super easy, right? And then you get to go to the beach. You work out and then you go to the beach, or you spend the weekends on the shore. Like, it's still pretty fun around. You're still having a good time. So it's really, it always helps if you have your own house. That's a huge benefit.
Yeah, no. Just kind of going off that, like, is there any certain like superstitions maybe that like you would do either like before games or just to kind of get yourself into like that game mode, like right before you started?
Yeah, I think I kind of learned as a player, like the games they'd start like 24 hours ahead. It wasn't just like, it wasn't just like driving to the rink and getting ready to go. Started kind of the night before, and you make sure you're eating. And I mean, I guess you are all week, but you really make sure you have a nice meal the night before a game, and you make sure you're in bed early at a good time. And then the day of the game is kind of more like a routine. And I think it evolves over time as you're a player. And they have pregame skate, and then you feel like you got to eat something. And if I don't get my 2 hours of sleep, I'm a basket case. And and I got to drive this day to the rink. And I just got older. Like, I don't know. I just try to really like. I felt like there's already enough to think about. I wasn't going to create like other problems for myself.
Just make it easier on you.
Yeah, and you have young kids, and you have wood floors in the house, and one of them might be screaming their brains out one afternoon. There's nothing to do. I got to learn to get those little earplugs. That was the best thing I got. Like catch a nap, but and it wasn't. You just get away from the. I don't know. You just get better at like handling that stuff,
Yeah.
And then, but you have certain things. You're like, man, I always like to stop at Starbucks. I'm always stopping at Starbucks no matter what. And if I probably
what's your order?
Two things. That would be one thing. Like maybe your favorite coffee, and you're like, man, if I don't get that, I'm really damn. I mean, I'm not getting to the rink in the right way,
Yeah.
But I think and what time you got there too was to start your process there at the rink was things. I'm hesitant to call them like superstitions, more like rituals and
Gotcha.
preparation. More, I think that's a little more positive way to say it than superstition.
Okay.
Kind of just go through your ritual. But I think when you get older, you have more confidence in yourself anyway. You're like, I know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, because like at that point, like again, like for you who played so long, like you obviously know what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. Oh, I'll tell you. I mean, one story. We were playing Vancouver and Philly, and it must have been like it was probably 06, 07, and we got stuck on the not the Ben Franklin. What's the other bridge? The
Tacony?
No. The bridge.
Whitman?
Well, yeah, the Whitman. Yeah. So there was an ice storm, and everything got jammed up, and we were literally stuck on that bridge. Like there were 3 or 4 car loads of guys, which is creepy anyway. Getting stuck on top of the bridge,
that's not fun.
And Vancouver was there, and they delayed the game, and I think we didn't even get to the rink. We left Haddonfield at 5. I don't think we walked in the rink till 7, and the game got pushed back like a half hour. So we were all running from the car, literally get our stuff on, get on the ice. And then go out, and quick do a warm-up. The fans are all there. I mean, like people everybody's stuck on the bridge. So they gave people extra time to get there. And I didn't like that at all. That's the only time I played an NHL game where things have not
just felt weird.
Yeah. I did not like that at all. It just felt weird. Like you need those 2 hours. Guys are there 2 hours. You need those 2 hours before.
Yeah. You mentioned before that you would go to Starbucks. What was your order?
I think they just need a coffee lane, man. I just get coffee. Yeah.
Coffee
with cream and some sugar. And
there you go.
You go to the airport or anywhere else now, it's like, man, we just need a coffee lane. Somebody famous just tweeted that out the other day. I forget who it was. It was like, man, when is Starbucks just going to get a coffee lane?
Just as normal coffee lane, yeah.
Yeah. But I that was before the app and all that. I would love the app. You just hit your phone. It would be sitting there ready for you. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I just, big coffee, huge coffee, try to get myself all hopped up by caffeine.
Gotcha. It's funny because now I feel like there's so many guys that you see like they drink like 2 or 3 like Red Bulls or like stuff like that just to get them like amped up and like ready to go.
Yeah, I mixed that in. Well, I didn't drink coffee until I was like 35 until we built our house here.
Really?
Coffee machine in the wall. It was built-in things. I'm like, if we have this damn thing, I'm going to start using it. So I made myself start drinking coffee, and then I would. And then as I got older, I would drink a Red Bull too, like right around normal time. I would have a Red Bull too, but that's.
Gotcha.
Don't tell my wife. That's probably not good.
Yeah, we'll keep that for the pod.
Yeah.
So just one last thing. Is there any like specific things that just kind of help you like get into the flow of a game, or was it just like kind of like what you said, just like normal kind of routine stuff?
Yeah, I think as long as like physically you're feeling good there, and you just want something good, positive to happen in the first, like in the first couple of shifts, whether you maybe get a couple of hits in or something, you feel like light on your feet. I think that one of the things a lot of players do will gauge how their legs feel. How you feel. Do I feel like I'm, on my toes here a bit more? Am I skating? Is my brain like, am I feel like I'm standing around? Am I being lazy tonight? And so obviously guys who are better and more accomplished, towards, for example, we'll give those guys a little more time. Like if they are starting slow, but they tend to recognize each coach has a couple, 2, 3 things that they want to see other young guys. If they're not, if the coach tells the player exactly, this is what I want to see out of you tonight, A, B, and C. And then if that player's doing it, then he'll move on to something else, but veteran guys, you want something good to happen, a couple good shifts, a good shot on goal. I mean, you always take a goal. The first shift would be more, then you're like, all right, I'm on a great night. I'm going to have a great night. Then you feel like you can play all night, but I guess the first big thing is gauging your energy level. Like, how do you feel? Especially playing like a back and back. Do I feel sharp enough tonight? Do I feel like I got my legs with me?
Were you a fan of any of the back-to-backs? I feel like the Flyers, like they always have back-to-backs.
Yeah.
There's at least like 15 or 20 a season.
I don't mind them, especially like the Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon, or like Saturday at home at 1, and then like on the island at 1, or something like that, or vice versa. Just those are quick. I think doing those like March when they were flexing the schedule for TV and stuff, I think those just help your brain instead of doing the same 82, like routines in a row. And doing kind of the same thing, the same routine, and same time every day. I love, especially playing on the East Coast and high market, high profile teams, because they ABC wanted them, ESPN or whoever, NBC who had all these contracts. I always felt like those afternoon games are really good. Plus, you feel like you're getting a half day off, so you get out, you go to dinner, you can have a couple beers after, and it's like it wasn't like such a big deal. You weren't jamming yourself right into bed to do this again the next day. You could kind of have a little time to to yourself, maybe go out to dinner and just, or hang out with some friends or whatever.
Yeah. Just enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was, especially if you didn't have a game the next day, that was the best one. 1 o'clock game with nothing the next day. Those are the best ones.
Yeah.
Great. So
for sure. But yeah, no, I mean, Mike, that's it. That's all I got for you. Thanks again. Always good hearing your insight and, hearing you kind of tell your stories and stuff like that. And, I'll talk to you next week. All right.
All right, buddy. You got it, Chris. Thank you.
All right, man. I'll talk to you.
All right. See ya.
There he is, Mike Knuble from Kickin It With Knuble, the segment every week here on the show. Again, just if anyone's listening that maybe not have seen that before, or maybe just kind of tuning in first time, something like that. Mike does come on every week. We do the show, or we do the segment, for the show. 6:05 to 6:20 usually. It'll kind of depend and go over. Usually we're doing 6:20. Went a little over today. But yeah, no, that was great. Mike gives a lot of good insight. Thanks everybody again for tuning in. Timmy, see you're in here. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Jeffrey in here as well. My dad. What's up, Dad? Mr. Twister, Sean Fitzpatrick. What's up, guys? Again, we got Bill Meltzer coming up here in 3 minutes. Yep, Bill coming up in a couple of minutes. Yeah, Mike is great, man. Mike is awesome. A lot of good insight stories. Super nice guy. A lot of good things coming from Mike. I'm ready for hockey season too, Mr. Twister. I'm getting itchy. I'm getting bored. Like I'm really like I'm getting bored, man. Like I need hockey season. I need the Flyers back. Got a couple weeks though until we hit rookie camp and all that stuff. The Maher Media website is done. I cannot wait to launch. September 2nd we launch. That's the first day of the site. I'm very excited to kind of start putting everything out. And as this is the just see in the corner, this is the official podcast of Maher Media, the original pod of Maher Media. So this will be it'll be fun. It's going to be a really good season, I think, with the coverage of the site, and we got a lot of good talented people that are coming on, and going to be a lot of fun stuff. And obviously FOCO is our sponsor. Check out FOCO. You can use our code Maher for 10% off, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And you see the banners behind me, and nothing about my show or the channel or the videos or anything's changing. It's just this stuff is all kind of coinciding, and it's just like an extension of everything, really, and just like a big hub for all the Flyer stuff that I do and all this type of stuff. So I'm super pumped for it. It's going to be a blast, and there's a lot of fun things that we have planned, I think, over these next couple of years that we've been trying to talk about. And we started this May 8th, and I finished my semester at school on May 5th. So that Monday or around that weekend was when I really was prepping everything. And literally I have not stopped a single day the entire off season and summer to prep this entire thing. So I cannot wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, it's, I can't wait. I really can't. But anyway, I don't want to bore anybody with that. Yeah. So, got Bill Meltzer coming on in a couple of minutes. If anybody has any hockey questions for me and Bill, I will put them up on the screen. Obviously, I have my own as well, but it should be fun. Bill is always good, very talented, always good, talking with him and, hearing his insight and everything like that. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what he's thinking here as we, get to the start of the season and stuff. What was up with the guy on Twitter tweeting about Hart? I'm not sure, to be honest. I did see that. I don't really know. It'll be interesting to see what happens here with Hart coming up. Um, watch more Phillies offense. You'll be more bored. Hey, listen, the Phils have been playing better lately. Even though they did, get a tough series against the Twins, but I don't know, man. That up on that last game, that was rough. Jeffrey said, "I'm excited for the new season. My NHL center ice is now renewed, so I can keep up." Nice, that's awesome, Jeffrey. Enjoy that, man. It'll be fun. It should be a good season. We'll see what happens. All right, here he is. Got Bill coming in, and let's send this one up. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Chris. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. Always good hearing from you, hearing your insight. I'm curious, did you play any Puck Doku today?
I didn't get to it today. There was a couple of deadlines I was working around. I actually, I slept a little later this morning and had to play catch up. So then I missed today for Puck Doku and Immaculate Grid. So
How have you been doing with it? Good.
Yeah, some days can be tough. But whenever I can think of like Flyers that play for multiple teams, even the Flyers aren't one of the teams, one of the categories for that day. I can usually find some guys that will get good rarity scores.
Yeah.
And when you have guys that you have newer teams, that's when that's where I find a little bit harder because you have a smaller pool of players.
Right. And like there was one a couple weeks ago that had Seattle, and I was like, oh God, I can't even remember. But yeah, no, I mean it's been fun. There's been a couple of them that I've gotten kind of the same thing. Like if I know a Flyer that's played here and there. But yeah, it's funny. I did it with Mike 2 weeks ago, and he actually did really good at it. Some of the other ones that I took me like an hour to find certain, because what I tried to do was, you probably saw it, but I was trying to get guys that he played with as teammates on that team, and it was hard. But it's a fun game, especially when it's put up that early. It's kind of a brain teaser. But anyway, let's kind of get into the hockey talk. So there's still one more contract they have left. Morgan Frost. I figured you knew I was going to ask you about this. He's still an RFA. Is there any, maybe concern or anything like that Frost isn't going to, be signed by the time camp starts? Or are you thinking that he'll be?
I know. Yeah, I don't have a ton of concern about it. Now that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if we go into Labor Day and it's not done yet. Wouldn't be surprised if the calendar flips to the first week in September. And that might be when they, right after Labor Day, where maybe that's when they feel the sense of urgency. It's not uncommon where, and you have to look at it this way. Morgan's 2022-23 season was almost 2 seasons in one.
Yeah.
There was the final 55 games where he led the team in scoring. And then you have the first 27 games where
he's compared to a toilet seat.
Yeah, where he was at the fourth line for a while, where he was in towards his doghouse, where he got scratched for a game, all the things that led up to that. And so, do you pay him based upon the final 55 games? You can't pay him only based on the first 27, right. But where's the middle ground, and how much of it is Morgan betting on himself,
right?
And how much of it is the Flyers showing faith that he'll take that next step,
right?
I would not be surprised at all if they end up with a 1-year deal.
I was thinking
a compromise number. But the only thing with that is, then you're looking at an arbitration case potentially next off season,
right?
Once arbitration gets involved, and hopefully has a good year for himself and for the team.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a harder thing to negotiate when he's 2 years away from being unrestricted. But I think that's kind of the way it's going. I think unless there's there's some kind of breakthrough. I don't see them going 3 years because 3 years takes them right to UFA status.
Right.
But I could see 2 years if they could find a number that works for both of them, and then they have 1 year before to figure it out before he's potentially unrestricted. But I think the most likely scenario right now seems to be some kind of a 1 year compromise and then revisit it next offseason.
Yeah. I was curious if any part of this, and I'm curious kind of what you think too, like does any part of you maybe look at this as Morgan maybe looking at like an Alex Newhook type deal? Like 4 years at 2.9, where it's like, Newhook, who he put up 30 points, Frost put up, I think, 46. So, 16 more. Obviously there'd be more in that range, but I think it's a good point that you mentioned too. Like, there's, and basically it was 2 different seasons. It's a good point. Cause you really turned on at the end of the year. And I think a lot of people, some people saw that, some people maybe didn't, or maybe just didn't want to believe it. I don't know. But I think it's interesting. I'm just curious, like, does any part of you think that this could be, maybe it ends up being like a longer term deal, or are you just more set on 1 year?
I'm not sure that they think are convinced enough that Morgan fully turned the corner.
Okay.
I might disagree with that.
I personally do, if that's the case.
But I think that may be the thought process here.
Mm-hmm.
And for Frost, it's bet on yourself and maybe you cash in more in a year. Mm-hmm. One of the things with Frost too, besides leading the team in scoring over the final 55 games, I tell you, the guy put about actually a lot of even strength points. He led the team in even strength scoring as well as assists, and he didn't get much help from power play points.
No.
Now the Flyers power play collectively was bad.
Yeah.
But
I think the power play is, we could probably do a whole show on the power play alone.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
There's that.
For sure. So I think that, I think part of getting him to the next stage of his NHL development, it's going to incorporate more power play time. Not that he didn't get power play time, he did. But if you look at where he was relative to the group of forwards as a whole, I think it was 5th or 6th among forwards with power play ice time over the course of the season. That it had, which equates to a second power play unit usage. And but I think that if you really break it down, I think towards the latter part of the season, from March onward, I thought that in terms of entries into the offensive zone, he actually cleaned a lot of that stuff
I
up.
thought he got better at that too. Yeah.
Now there's still room for more consistency and whatever. It was a problem. I thought even, Morgan's season really turned around in early, really end of November, but really early December. That 55 game sample goes back to December 9th to the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I think hitting that next level will entail more power play production.
Yeah.
But I don't know where the Flyers as a team are going to be still on the power play. That when I look at their roster here, it's a bigger picture question. I kind of like the group of forwards. Maybe
I do too.
Maybe it's not an elite group of forwards, but it's a pretty deep one.
Yeah.
And I think they get scoring from different sources and different nights. Hopefully Couturier is healthy. Hopefully Atkinson is healthy. That would help quite a bit.
Yeah.
I have my share of concerns still with the blue line and keeping the puck out of the net.
Yeah.
but as far as the forward group goes, it's not a bad group, and it's a group that's going to continue to improve in years to come as Gauthier becomes NHL ready, Michkov eventually. I think the Flyers are in pretty good shape with that. But on the flip side, when you're always playing from, or too often playing from behind, and they need to also improve puck movement. They need to get out of their zone a little bit more easily, because a lot of times all you can do in that case is just hang in, hopefully get a line change out there, and get your next group out. That really reduces scoring opportunities. So I don't know where they're going to be in those regards. I'm hopeful a guy like York can take the next step. I'm hopeful that maybe Emil Andre can make an impact this season. It's going to the defenseman's ability to get the puck up to the forward is going to have an effect on all the forward scoring and on team scoring.
Mm-hmm.
some of these guys are trying to take that next step or still unknown quantities. So those are the things that concern me heading into camp, much more than whether Ross will agree to a deal by the start of camp, which I think will happen.
Right. No, for sure. And that's the thing. I'm not necessarily concerned either. I think just I think the biggest thing with the defense for me is that, and I talked about this with Mike. We actually did a whole part of our segment last week was talking about the D, and it was just more of, they don't have anyone that can log minutes like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, you get rid of a Provorov, right? I mean, you have no one's going to come in and going to be able to take those minutes away. That's a lot of minutes that that you're throwing onto somebody else, like a guy like Sanheim or a guy like Cam York or even Ristolainen for that matter. Now, is there part of me that thinks that a guy like Stahl's probably going to play too high in the lineup? Yeah, I think so. It just worries me. And again, I agree with the forwards. I mean, I think if healthy, if you have Couturier, you have Atkinson, you got to hope that Farabee's better. If that's the case, I think they probably will score more. I don't know by how much, right? Because again, special teams, you mentioned that a little bit, but defensively, they've definitely gotten worse. And the other part of it is, who's your starting goaltender on October 12th?
Right.
Because right now you have no idea.
Well, I mean, as of now, it's Carter Hart.
Right.
As long as that status quo holds, then it is Carter Hart, and the question is who's the second goalie.
Right.
And that's really an open question mark right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's the nature of the position is obviously there's always a lot of pressure on the goalie.
Right.
But when a team D is strong enough on one side or weak enough on the other side, the goaltending is going to go with it. You give up several backdoor goals that you can't blame on the goalie. Now it's in the back of the goalie's head. I got to watch out for the backdoor kind of play because that side isn't guarded. So you're starting to cheat off the post. All of a sudden, you let in a short side goal, and well, that's awful. That's on the goalie, and it is. But you can't separate the whole thing of it. So much of it is how the team is playing,
right?
What the goalie's confidence level is. It's so hard to separate goaltending from team play.
Right.
Even though it's a solitary position, it's also very much dependent on how the team as a whole plays.
Right.
And again, if the team as a whole is strong enough or weak enough, it'll either pick up or drag down.
Exactly. And that's why you've seen Hart's numbers for a goaltender that, I know a lot of people only really look at numbers for goalies. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know the last time I've looked at Hart's numbers because there's really no point. I mean, you've seen it. I've seen it, how bad they've been in front of the goalies in these past couple of years. Sometimes it's gotten better. I think last year they were, better as a team for the most part, but there were still, glaring issues. But defensively, it gets rough, and and I agree. I think for the most part, it's hard to say, oh, he should have had that or this and that when there's 3 failed clears at the blue line, that type of stuff. So it's kind of hard to say, and sometimes it's you got to pick and choose really. Who you want to blame because there's so many issues at times too. And, part of the goalie thing is obviously Fedotov now. I don't know how much you can talk about it, but is there anything, that maybe just any quick thoughts you have on the Fedotov situation and kind of what's been happening these past couple of days?
Well, obviously it's a positive that the Flyers got a favorable ruling here.
Yeah.
And I can only speak for myself.
Mm-hmm.
The organization has not issued a statement on it yet. Mm-hmm. I think they're waiting to see where the next steps go. Pretty sure that's where things are right now. It sounds like Red Army Siska is planning to appeal to the now. It'll be an appeal within the IIHF. They're appealing a IIHF decision to the IIHF disciplinary board. I'd be shocked if they win that. Yeah. I think they're only hoping for a reduction of of some of the sanctions against them. And again, I can only speak for myself here. In my own view here, I don't think they deserve to have the sanctions reduced. There's not a transfer agreement or a memorandum of understanding between the NHL and the KHL. On the flip side, even when the NHL canceled it, the two sides were honoring the spirit of it, and they really were just keeping that status quo. Totaled contracts are nothing new in the NHL, and this wasn't a case of Fedotov skipping out on the contract, deciding I don't want to come. He had no choice in the matter.
Yeah,
he couldn't honor the contract.
Yeah,
and I probably won't say more than that in those regards.
Right.
But I think that the fact that they knew he had a contract, he couldn't fulfill it, that there's a precedent with total contracts, and yet they enticed him by whatever means they enticed him by to re-sign a new deal. I never thought that once it got out of the KHL's hands and went to the International Hockey Federation that they were going to win. And the decision, frankly, didn't surprise me.
Right.
But now what are the next steps? And if Ivan were to stay in Russia, follow that, well, okay. In terms of playing in the KHL, he's suspended for 4 months, September until January 1st.
They're basically kind of treating him like he's an RFA that hasn't signed, really.
Yeah.
Because he can't play until January 1st, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, he can't play over there. He can't play in Russia. I thought it was odd that they didn't nullify the deal because the team is banned from international transfers until August 10th, I believe, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And an NHL to KHL transfer is an international transfer.
Right.
So it wouldn't make sense for that to be allowed. I think the fact that he's banned from any league play prevents an end around from Cescalona because, what would stop them from lending him out to a VHL team in the minor league or a weak sister KHL team until the suspension is up, then he rejoins the team on January 1st. So, this way, if he's banned from any play in Russia until the suspension is up, then that takes that option away from them. Mm-hmm. But for any player, and you have to feel for him to miss a season and a half. That's hard.
It's
hard,
especially a goalie too. Yeah,
to miss that and then jump right back in.
Yeah.
But at this point, in terms of NHL eligibility, which this doesn't affect NHL eligibility, he could play right away in the NHL. But he's unrestricted after next season, so it wouldn't make the slightest bit of sense to send him to the Phantoms just to turn him loose as an unrestricted free agent after all the trouble you go to.
Right.
It certainly doesn't make sense to loan him back to a KHL team just to turn him loose at the end of the season after you've been through the process here of trying to have your contractual rights upheld. That if you were going to loan him, it probably would have already been done. I would think. Again, this is just my read on it, and it's nothing nothing official. But that's just trying to follow a line of logic on here. So I think it's very much up in the air. I would caution people, though, be very careful about what you read, what you believe on the situation. Wait until there's some kind of official word on it. It's can only go by what the player himself has said, and what the player himself said. The only thing he said on it is, "I just want to play hockey again."
Yeah.
And whatever the decision is, I'll abide by it.
Right.
He hasn't ever contradicted that. It's kind of, he wants to play. Playing over here he could play over here right away. He wouldn't have to wait another half of a season. Right. But how it's going to all play out is anybody's guess. And the other part of it too is I know people worry about Michkov.
I was going to ask you about that. I don't think there's anything. Yeah,
and honestly, I don't think there's.
It's two different teams.
Two different teams, two different rival teams at that.
Yeah.
and you're talking about a player signed for 3 more years over there.
One who's 18, the other one's 26.
And yeah. So,
and I feel like they have to know that Michkov's going to come over here, right? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's, I mean, I know it's years ago, but they probably felt, I wonder if Capitals fans, when they got Ovechkin, thought the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, if there's anything that's similar to that, I don't know, because I was only 1 year old, but still. But anyway, and speaking of Michkov, played at center in the preseason. I know you've been kind of keeping up on him and following that. What have you kind of seen from him from center? It doesn't really shock me, to be honest, him going to center. And I was talking about this with a friend of mine, and he's like, I don't know. He's like, I didn't really understand it. And I was like, like, he has the skill. Yeah. The Flyers, they've done that for years. I mean, guys like Lawton, guys like Raffle. Michael Raffle is probably one of the better examples of it. Guys that could come over here that were natural wingers turned into centers, essentially. The only thing, Giroux, guys that you could just make into centers off of faceoffs. But just kind of going off that with Michkov, like, what have you liked? What are some things maybe you don't like? And just kind of as a whole, what have you seen from him at center in the preseason?
He has not looked at all out of place, and even off the puck. He's a very smart hockey player. He goes to the right spots.
Yeah.
I think he has a good work ethic. I've seen him, commendable competitiveness level and effort from him in the preseason games. Is he immune from mistakes? No. Right. But he's still only 18 years old, and he has all the tools actually to be a pretty complete player.
Yeah.
And one thing that moving to center has done is it's opened up his playmaking a little bit. Now, you want the goal scoring, and I think he'll score goals too, and probably score more on the wing, maybe a few more assists playing in the middle. But points are points. If you're setting somebody else up and they're scoring, or you're scoring it, it's still a goal on the board for your side.
Exactly. If the puck's going in, it doesn't matter.
No, for sure. Yeah. And he can create.
Right.
Playing in the middle opens up a lot of opportunities for creativity for him. Now, I don't have a lot of negatives. The only thing I'll say is that
that's good to know.
I've noticed that he's great on his edges. He's very hard to take off the puck when he's moving laterally. Mm-hmm. He's worked on the walls. He's forechecked well. This is my first real time just watching him shift after shift.
Yeah,
I think his speed is okay. I don't think he has blinding breakaway kind of speed. Mm-hmm. You'd like to see me Pavel Bure out there.
It's not the end of the world. First step. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the end of the world if he's not, because he's such a smart player.
Right.
And again, he is so good moving laterally. If you're playing center, you're not going to cheat out of the defensive zone. So he's not going to cherry pick out of the red line.
Right.
So he'd be a little later leaving the defensive zone. So breakaway 2-on-1 kind of things. I don't know if he's going to get a ton of them, but I think when you weigh it in the mix there, as long as he keeps developing in the middle the way it looks like he's very capable of developing, it adds versatility and it adds another option.
Right.
And B, truthfully, if you weigh the value to a team of a center versus a winger, center usually comes out ahead. Centers are typically more valuable all the time, than wingers. So, and that way if he plays center, then maybe Gauthier can stay on a wing. It just opens up a whole lot of possibilities. The more versatility you have, the more options you have, the better. I don't see any downside to it.
Right, and that's how I feel too. I mean, where he is now, I mean, I think part of it is like a lot of the videos and the clips and the highlights that you see on YouTube and stuff, because that's all I really have to watch them. And for some people, and like when I look at it, and I'm like, a lot of it's from when he's 15, 16, 17. I mean, now he's 18 years old. It's like, how much of that could have changed? And also at the same time, like, as he gets older, does he get better along the wall? Like you were saying, the forecheck, right? Physicality, right? If he puts, more weight on, all that stuff, I think can help as well. And I think it's better too, because I feel like, he can play both sides of the power play, both flanks. You could have him on the right side as the left shot, or you can have him on the open one-timer spot too. So that's part of it. And same thing with Gauthier. I think it's a good thing you mentioned Gauthier. And again, this is the last one I do have for you, Bill. Does any part of you kind of think that since they've drafted Michkov, that maybe some fans or different people or just anything like that, they've kind of forgotten like how good guys like Gauthier can be and other prospects and stuff like that? Like, it's not just Michkov, you know what I mean? And that's not me saying that Michkov is bad or we shouldn't be excited, because that's, farthest from the truth. And I'm, hell of a lot of excited for Michkov, because one of the best players that we've, ever picked in the draft. But, I think there's a little bit of a mix there where it's like, he can't be where some people are kind of just like, throwing everything down on everyone else. More specifically, I guess guys like Gauthier, because we have Michkov.
Yeah, and I think that the organization and the players themselves only benefit from it.
Yeah.
And even if, I think if Michkov is on a wing, some people put out, Gauthier in the middle and Michkov and Forster are the wings. I don't love that combination.
Me neither.
Because someone has to be the distributor.
Exactly.
And at that point, almost by default, Michkov becomes your distributor. I want to see him score too. I want to see a balance. I want to see where he's a threat either to score or to set up a play.
Right.
But if they're on two different lines, or if Michkov is in the middle and Gauthier is on a wing, then I think it can work. And Gauthier to me is always going to be a shoot first player, and that can work in the middle. It's not not that there aren't guys who have been shoot first centers who've had successful careers. That certainly isn't the case. It's just just when you're building a line combination, you just have to account for what complements him the best.
Right.
I
think part of it too, and so I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think part of it too is Forster's probably going to be in the league at least maybe 2 or 3 years by the time we even see Michkov.
Right.
That's part of it too. It's like you could be putting a veteran guy. So, but go on, continue.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you have your current group,
right?
You have the Tippett's, Farabee, Frost. Hopefully those guys continue their development.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you have a pretty darn talented and deep core of forwards.
Yeah.
I think that I think you have to go work with the group you have. I don't think you pine for somebody else's group. You look at how you make the group you have work the best way they can. And I think it's a group that potentially could go 3 lines deep in terms of scoring, with a fourth line that's a viable fourth line.
Right.
A guy like Denwye, for example. Mm-hmm. I think he's an NHL player.
Yeah.
So, as you're developing guys, all of a sudden you have a pretty good group. I think if you build the blue line up a little bit, and that not just at the current NHL level, but just in terms of the prospect pool.
I agree. I think they need to add more there too.
And that can sometimes be easier said than done. I mean, if you look at the group of defensemen the Flyers had just a few years ago, where they expended a lot of first round picks on defensemen, 2013, 2014, 2015. Yeah. Their first round picks were defensemen. Cam York was their first pick in 2019. So, that you can't build everything at once. And sometimes you need guys who are drafted a little bit later to click for you too.
Right.
Like Ghost did to an extent. That guy was a 3rd round pick and he was contributing. But I think just in terms of looking at the upside of the defensive prospect pool, I think that's the next step here. Now, if you go, if you go another year out and let's just say you're positioned to draft, Heiserman, for example, you have to draft him. You take the best player.
Right.
But if you're drafting a little bit later, there's a lot of good defensemen available. Mm-hmm. And, maybe you can build a little bit off of that. And, I think we're not going to see it this season, what you have, but I'm hopeful that within the next 2 years or so, you've got a good young group, a good group that's in the prime of its career.
Yeah.
And then some other pieces coming along. And also there's trade possibilities too.
Yeah.
Sometimes you trade. It's so much easier in this league to trade from strength and so much easier to trade some youth where where they haven't really maxed out their contracts yet. That's where you can make hockey trades still in this game.
Yeah.
And the deeper you are, the more ability you have to make trades. So, it's still, they're not there yet. There's steps to take, but I think the early steps have been promising ones.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think everything from this summer, it feels like someone has just taken the 200-pound fridge that was on top of the Flyers and just pushed it over. You know what I mean? Like it feels better to talk about the team again. But Bill, that is the last one I do have for you. There was one in the chat that was from my father that he sent me a text. It was a wrestling one, and I do need to find it. I think if I can.
All right.
Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. He said, "Ask Bill which faction of the Fabulous Freebirds he'd like better." I don't know what any of this means. This is like a second language, but
I think you have to go Hayes, Gordy, and Roberts.
Okay.
I like Jimmy Garvin as kind of the fourth Freebird, but I think you got to go with the classic lineup. And I was a big Terry Gordy guy.
Okay. Have you secured your ticket for WrestleMania yet?
No. And being in Philly, and my son enjoying wrestling, I probably need to do that. I'd like to do that. I'm not really following WWE or AEW of late. But maybe as it gets a little closer, I can, start watching and get up on it again a little bit.
There you go. All right. Well, we'll see. Hopefully I'll see you there. I was supposed to go with my dad, and he ended up getting tickets with his buddies, and then I didn't get a ticket, so I guess I'm not going. But anyway, thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. Always good hearing from you. And we'll see what happens soon.
All right.
See you, Bill. Bye. There he is, Bill Meltzer. Awesome stuff. Bill is great, as always. This is it's all I got, everybody. We actually went over an hour here. Thanks everybody again for all the support as always. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe button, all that type of stuff. Thank you to Mike. Thank you to Bill. And thanks everybody again in the chat as well. And I'll talk to everybody soon. See you guys.